Hope everybody's doing great out there. Hey, 3, 2, 1. It is Wednesday afternoon in East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Leaves are starting to change around here. Football season has taken a little bit of a turn for worse, a big turn for the worse. We'll be talking about that today and this afternoon for this week's edition of Spartan Mag Live. Still working to get twice a week, that type of thing. Hope everybody's got the stomach for it. It's been a tough football season here in the last 2 weeks. We will be talking about some of the particulars, what's going right, what's going wrong, mostly what's going wrong, what's being done about it, and what are the chances that it can get fixed. What are the chances it can get fixed in time for this weekend's game at Maryland? It's going to be a rain game, probably, in College Park, Maryland. And Michigan State in dire need of a victory, in dire need of a good performance to feel better about themselves, to show some progress. And go ahead and post questions over in the comments area. I know that the crowd is a little bit smaller today because it is a work day. It is Wednesday afternoon. But we appreciate everybody coming in and checking out Spartan Mag Live. What we do here, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. That is your source for Michigan State sports, football, basketball, recruiting, and all around everything that's Michigan State. Last night we were talking a little bit about Michigan State's soccer victory over Michigan over there at DeMartin Stadium. Over 3,000 people. You may have seen it on Big Ten Network. Nice crowd over there and poor weather, too. So soccer fans is a real thing with the young people around campus. That's a real thing that's happening. Anyway, SpartanMag.com, it is the source for Michigan State sports. It is the church of what's happening now. It is the daily narrative. The Underground Bunker message board is where I speak with Michigan State fans, subscribers, Spartan Maggers, as well as Paul Konerdijk, our great intern Noah Sprunger, intern Jake Laskawa, recruiting anchor Jason Killip, senior writer Ricardo Cooney, all doing a great job, and a cast of thousands, Michigan State fans all over the world chiming in. Try to keep them separated a little bit because the pitchforks get up a little bit there. You know, the elbows get high. There's some disagreements and stuff. It's kind of like being a recess attendant, but everybody has a common interest, common love for Michigan State, so there's that common ground that makes the Underground Bunker message board a web community unlike any other for Michigan State fans. There's other communities out there that are pretty good, but ours is, I'm biased, but I think it's pretty special. Been doing SpartanMag.com for a long time. Spartan Magazine going back to the early 1990s. Shut that down around 2016 to focus on the website, SpartanMag.com, and we feel like we are improving our product all the time. I thought we had a great August at SpartanMag.com in terms of covering Michigan State preseason camp, and the last 2 weeks, Michigan State playing poor football. You've seen it. And we will talk about that today. So over at the Underground Bunker message board, I invited Michigan State fans, Spartan Maggers, to post over at SpartanMag.com. Any questions? We got about 14 questions to go over today. We'll go over those questions. Talk some Michigan State football. Michigan State coming off a 34-7 loss to Minnesota. Did not look good. You guys all saw that. In the pre-snap read last week at SpartanMag.com, I did not forecast a favorable situation for Michigan State going into that game, nor did I forecast a favorable situation going into the Washington game. And over at SpartanMag.com, some of our subscribers actually lashed out at me a little bit, feeling it was overly negative. You know, one person posted, I don't think we've seen a positive SpartanMag.com pre-snap read since 2015. I wouldn't go that far, but I'm a little frustrated by that because I feel like if I just tell you what I really think, there's going to be people they're going to have hurt feelings about it. Well, 6 minutes into that Minnesota game, I hope you know what I was talking about. I did not like Michigan State's chances of winning that game at all. Minnesota is darn good. Michigan State has a lot of loose screws. The question was whether Michigan State could tighten up those loose screws between the Washington game and the Minnesota game. I had my doubts about that because the loose screws against Washington were a little bit alarming. And then Minnesota's coming in with a completely different style of play. And Minnesota is excellent, as you saw, underrated. I mean, just now getting into the top 25. Minnesota, as I've said on some other, on the VCast and things I've written, Minnesota's only punted 3 times this year. I'm pretty sure I saw that prior to the pre-snap read. 3 times they punted. Did not punt against Michigan State. Very good ground attack, senior quarterback. You saw what happened. Then they've got the RPO sewn in there. Underrated defense. Minnesota's defense, underrated what they put together the last couple of years. Very much an Iowa Hawkeye type of defense. Maybe not as physical, but the way they can get into zone defense and make things difficult. Really excellent football. And last year, Wisconsin had won 7 straight games, and they had averaged like 265 yards rushing per game in those 7 wins. They played Minnesota for the Paul Bunyan Axe last game of the season, and Minnesota held that Wisconsin rushing attack to fewer than 70 yards rushing. That's a big accomplishment against Wisconsin. They lost a couple players from that defense, but it's a program defense. Michigan State, you saw, had trouble moving the ball consistently against that defense, which did not help Michigan State's offense, of course. What's going on with Michigan State's, which didn't help Michigan State's defense, that Michigan State's offense didn't move it. All right, so what's going on with Michigan State's defense? We'll get into those questions in a roundabout way as we get into this. But some of the main things are Minnesota and Washington are very good. Secondly, Michigan State's defense was not good last year. We all knew that. Question was whether Michigan State could improve upon that. I thought they could. I thought that there'd be better same-pageness in the secondary. We saw in the Washington game after Michigan State cut it to a two-touchdown game, first drive of the second half, down by 15 or whatever it was, early in the third quarter. Washington gets it back, bust. Angelo Gross beaten on an over-route touchdown, down by 22 again. Same type of mistake that we saw too often last year. Those type of things, alarming. Minnesota doesn't stress you as much in the back end as Washington did. They probably could have, didn't have to. So the defense was not good last year. Trying to make it better this year. That's one. Two, the injuries. I mean, I've covered a lot of Michigan State teams that have had some injuries in the past. 2012 had a lot of injuries. Basically, some of those bottoming out seasons, injuries has a factor. You know, last year, Michigan State, what injuries did Michigan State have last year? Maybe one or two. You know, and there were some dings here and there. Kenneth Walker later in the season. But nothing like this. Michigan State's front six. And in today's defenses, people play a front six. They don't really play a front seven. Nobody does. Not even Iowa. Front six. You know, 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers. Some people do it 2 defensive linemen and 4, whatever it is, your front six. Of Michigan State's front 6, 5 of the front 6 were not available in the second half against Minnesota. 5 of the front 6. Bogle out in the second quarter. Panashuk doesn't play anymore. Pietrowski is what I meant. Pietrowski hurt against Washington, did not play. Slade's been out since the Akron game. Simeon Barrow out at halftime. He's been missing time in some games all season. 29 snaps. Doing the best he can. Hey, but Slade and Barrow, excellent defensive tackle tag team, not been available. Michigan State's second-string defensive tackles have been pretty good, but they showed signs of wearing down later in that Minnesota game. Maverick Hansen, in case you didn't notice, injured in the last 5 minutes of that game. I'd have to go back and watch the TV copy to see how well he walked off the field. I wasn't really watching it live. I went through the cut-ups the last couple of days. I didn't really see how gingerly he got up, but he was playing pretty solidly as a second-string defensive tackle. Over 50 snaps against Minnesota, getting worn down. Looked like a lower body issue. I'm not sure where he is. He's not a starter, but of course, Darius Snow out for the year. So of your front 6, 5 are out. Show me any team in the country that can play whatever their defensive level is. If let's say they're a B+ overall defense, you take out 5 of their top 6 players in the front 6, and that B+ team becomes a C+ team, guaranteed. Maybe Georgia can handle it. Maybe Alabama. Not many others. You take out 5 of your top 6, 5 of your front 6. But this wasn't a B+ defense. You know what Michigan State's defense was last year? They had trouble against the starting quarterback when they played Akron, right? So Michigan State overall maybe is a C+ defense. You take out 5 of your first 6, your front 6. It's going to go down a notch. We're not getting to the pass defense yet. So you've got that injury situation. Plus Xavier Henderson out. Senior captain communicator. I don't know when he's coming back. I don't know if he will this year. Then you're playing Washington and Minnesota. 2 excellent offenses. Excellent. Penix, is there a better quarterback in the country than Penix? I don't know. The guy reads the whole field, got a great arm, got excellent receivers. Good and a good offensive line. Minnesota, they've punted 3 times this year. Excellent balanced offense. I think Minnesota is going to give Penn State all they can handle in a couple weeks. Washington is playing UCLA Friday night. I'm hearing the point spread's kind of tight on that. I'm expecting Washington to win. I don't know. I'm kind of expecting Washington to go ahead and go 9-0. I think Minnesota, if they beat Penn State, can go 7-8-0. I think both of those teams could be in the top 10 in 3 or 4 weeks. We'll see if that turns out to be true. Anyway, mediocre defense, ton of injuries, excellent opposition. That's how you get what ended up happening the last couple of weeks, partly. That does not excuse some of the loose screws that are all over the place. That's the more alarming part. All right, let's go to the question. Let's go to the mailbag. I kind of already answered one of the questions right there, but it's good to have people checking us out. Numbers are actually increasing a little bit. We certainly appreciate that. Let's go here to the questions. Question number 1, Spefton from East Lansing, Michigan says, this might be a tough one to answer, but how would you prioritize the huge task facing Mel Tucker to turn the season around? What specific areas would you attack and correct first? Which are the most urgent areas to correct and the most important ones to turn around? I mean, great question. And that's what the coaches are trying to figure out right now. And that's what it all boils down to right now. Where can you turn it around? That defensive front, everyone talks about the pass defense, but I'm thinking defensive front. It has to start up front, both against the run and the pass. That front six, talked about that. The 5 of the 6 that were not available in the second half of the game against Minnesota. Maverick Hansen was solid, but 5 minutes to go got hurt. So if you're trying to turn the season around, first of all, who is your starting defensive line? Who do you have? Pietrowski, I don't know if he's playing. Bogle, I don't know if he's playing. Slade, I don't know if he's playing. Barrow, I don't know if he's playing. Hansen, I don't know if he's playing. So turning things around becomes a question of what's realistic. And defensive end, Windman is still around. Avery Dunn comes in as a redshirt sophomore, undersized. He was kind of a hopeful pass rush guy coming out of Ohio. Diamond in the rough type of guy. Has never really played. He's been on the travel team. In 2020 on the travel team, didn't play. A guy they've kept in the program, been bringing him along. Injuries happen. Bogle's out. Pietrowski's out. So Avery Dunn is in there, and he's playing strong side defensive end, taking on tackle tight end double teams, and he just can't he can't withstand a double team, especially the type of double team Minnesota was throwing at him. That's who Michigan State has there right now. Avery Dunn doing his best, but you're getting deeper into that depth chart. You can talk about next man up, but it's not really practical in some ways. That's where the team is. And if you have a weakness like that, teams are going to go right at it. Is Avery Dunn going to start against Maryland? I don't know. It's possible. I would have to think if Bogle's not available and Pietrowski's not available. Doors Fan 91 just posted that Brule's been a big disappointment. I would agree with that. I thought he was quick in the spring scrimmage. I thought he looked quick on opening night, and his snap counts have been below 15. He's played nickel when they've gone to, bigger personnel to combat bigger personnel when the opponent goes with multiple tight ends. I'm having trouble with my own audio here a little bit. But I expected him to be a guy that would start. He missed that tackle on that third down scramble at the end of the second quarter. That was not ideal. There was some talk that maybe he thought the quarterback was going to slide. I don't think that's the case. He went in with a shoulder tackle. I don't know what that was all about. Did not look good. And when you see something like that, maybe that's why he's not playing. But he's played a lot in the past for Mississippi State. But, when you start bringing in 4-star guys that are leaving other programs, I wonder if history will show that those 4 stars at other programs maybe lack a little certain something. Now, Minnesota, to their credit, they had a starting right guard, Chuck Falaga, on the offensive line, transferred from Michigan. He's a former starter at Michigan. Lost his starting job. So, at Michigan, transferred to Minnesota. He's a big part of that offensive line. The right tackle is a transfer 4-star from Notre Dame. He did not play much at Notre Dame. So Minnesota has a combination of both right there. Minnesota had a 4-star transfer from Texas A&M wide receiver. There was a top 100 national guy. He's done okay for them, but he's not really a game breaker, but they're happy they have him, especially now that Altman's out. 2 or 3 sprinkling in for a middleweight program like Minnesota makes sense. To go wholesale in that regard and to expect your defense to really rely on some of those transfers. You're seeing this year there's some hit and miss in there. Jacoby Windman has definitely been a breath of fresh air. Bogle's been pretty good against the run. He's firm against the run. Not a great pass rusher, but he's firm. Now he's hurt. But Brule's not done much. I guess, if you're bringing in 6 transfers and 3 pan out. We'll have to wait and see whether that is a good rate or not. Really bothered by this sound thing I'm having problems with. Anyway, so you're starting defensive line. If you've got, Derek Harmon in there, he's been starting, but he was starting to wear down at the end of that Minnesota game. Played about 58 snaps. Was starting to get pushed off a little bit there late in the game, understandably. Jalen Hunt gets in there, plays about 10 snaps. And you know what? He looks kind of solid. Jalen Hunt, been talking about his pilot light and so forth. His pilot light looks pretty good right now. He has had some injuries. He's working through some things. So I've got to give him full credit for battling through some injuries and hanging in there. He looks physically strong and sturdy. And I'm not sure. I mean, he's playing. There's not a risk that he's going to harm anything further, but he was compromised injury-wise with some lower body things. But I saw him two-gap some guys and look firm doing it. Would not be surprised if Jalen Hunt plays more against Maryland. Deshaun Mallory gets in there. Hadn't played for 3 games. You're talking about Deshaun Mallory, a guy that started 2 years ago. Then he lost a lot of weight. Last year, fell out of the playing group. This year, I don't even know if he traveled to Washington or not. Hadn't played at all. That's something that's kind of strange about this team and this program. The way some players just disappear. Deshaun Mallory starts 2 years ago, loses weight, disappears. Gets in this game, didn't look bad, but player development, it's interesting how some guys just disappear. Chester Kimbrough starts for 3 games, gets pulled at halftime of the Washington game, and disappears. Does not play in the second half, did not play last week. The participation report said Kimbrough played on special teams. I didn't notice that, but Kimbrough's been shuffled back. That's just kind of an interesting way to go about player development. I don't really know what to think about that. But defensive tackle Alex Van Summeren comes in, true freshman, played a little bit opening night, played a couple snaps against Washington. He's doing his best, but he's a teenager, he's a freshman, and he's having trouble at this level against double-team blocks, holding the point. Hunt can do it. Van Summeren needs to get older, needs to get better, needs to get stronger. Going to work on that. So you got Hunt, you got Mallory. Hunt has had those injury problems. Mallory, we don't know. Van Summeren, we don't know. Derek Harmon, playing well. Maverick Hansen, I assume that they'll get those guys out there. I don't know. But they're really, as much depth as they had at defensive tackle, and they went 3.5 deep at that position, they're really close to going with a walk-on like Evan Brunning out there a little bit. Michael Fletcher, another guy that played back in 2020, had some tackles for loss. Not an all-around player, a little bit too lean, but he's wiry strong for a lean guy. A guy I've always said is not great, turning the corner as a pass rusher, but didn't, 2020 got some time. Last year, very little time. First 3 games, 0 time. This game, he gets in, emergency-type situations. And Fletcher's not playing defensive end. He was playing defensive tackle. I couldn't believe it. He did play defensive tackle a little bit later in the game. I think he had 15 snaps or so. These are not major contributions, but that's where Michigan State had to go to. Fletcher played 13 snaps. Zion Young, the true freshman, 8 snaps. I think Zion Young has looked nice and sturdy for a freshman. Interesting that some of those other guys are getting a few more snaps than Zion Young. But, I'll have to ask Stout on Thursday. Tim Stout, I do a weekly thing here in Lansing Radio, and I hear him hedging toward possibly picking Michigan State, which cracks me up a little bit because he kind of picked Minnesota because he didn't think Michigan State would lose again. He kind of picked Washington. It's interesting because all July, my friend Tim Stout kept saying, all these people are picking Michigan State, drinking the Kool-Aid. That's not, he doesn't use that phrase, but he says, based on what? Why do they think Michigan State's any good? They'll play 2 MAC opponents. That won't tell us anything. All these people around here, believing in the hype of Michigan State being good. And he says that all summer. And then the season comes and he picks Washington and he picks Minnesota. And he's leaning toward picking Maryland. I want to ask him, if you want to pick Michigan State to beat Maryland, based on which players? Who's your starting defensive line? I mean, I think Windman will be out there. I don't know. I'm hoping Slade might be getting closer to healthy. I don't know. And how good will he be when he comes back? And, Slade was really not that great the first 2 games. Anyway, the question was, how would I prioritize turning the season around? No, the question was, of turning the season around. What specific areas would you attack and correct first? So those are the initial problems. But pass defense, getting everybody in pass defense on the same page. There was a problem at Washington. There was a problem last year. Do you dumb it down and keep it simple? I think they were trying to dumb it down a little bit last week, and that's why they weren't very sophisticated in terms of disguising things or checking in and out of defenses as the offense was checking in and out of plays. Usually a good defense will disguise things late, might show something. Then when the offense checks, the defense will make a check, or even if it's a dummy check. I mean, Michigan State wasn't doing that last week, I think because they were trying to dumb it down because they've got so many people out and they've had so many same-page problems. They wanted to keep it a little more simple in that, but they still played a variety of coverages, man-to-man, two deep, man-under, got beat on a quarterback scramble on that one. They're playing, they did a lot of single safety high, and whether it be press man or a little bit of cover 3 zone out of that. And then later they changed to more two deep zone once they were getting devoured through the passing attack. So they were doing a variety of things. It's not like they're doing one thing and it's not working. They're doing a variety of things like everybody else does. You just have to do them better. So can you dumb down the secondary and keep it simple? One way or another, you're asking how do you turn the season around? That defensive front's got to get healthy, and you have to have some miracles up there. And they kept slugging up there. Defensive tackles, second string, defensive tackle position graded out well all day against Minnesota. They were solid, even without Slade, even with Barrow only playing half of it. Harmon and Hansen were good, but they did wear down. But you have to get the back 7, back 8, back 7 on the same page. That includes linebackers. Linebacker drops continue to be a little bit scattershot. You saw that in the Washington game. A couple times linebackers vacating areas, Van Sumeren getting sucked out a little bit, late leak tight end. One was schematic, one was a mental. So it's not just the secondary. You're not, Chester Kimbrough got targeted against Washington, gave up some plays. But you're not seeing teams burning Brantley over and over. He gave up a back shoulder fade. Coverage was okay. His feet were okay. Real good pass. Guy jumped up, made a nice play. But you're not seeing Brantley getting burned all over the place. You're not seeing, Amir Speed getting burned all over the place or Ronald Williams. Now, Amir Speed, his agility is just kind of average. He's got excellent straight line speed and strength. So, like Scotty Hazelton was talking about yesterday, what do we have in terms of our players? What do they do well, and how can we put them in position to accentuate those positives? Amir Speed's a guy with size, good straight line speed. Agility just kind of okay. What does his press, coverage look like? We've not seen a lot of that. It hasn't been targeted a lot with that. One time Washington went deep on him. I think it was part of cover 3. It wasn't press, offhand jam hip turn. We didn't really get a chance to see that. I think his agility coming out of breaks is just kind of mediocre. But you hear good things about him as a leader and how conscientious he is about improving himself as a player. That's positive. They need more of that. And as the losses mount up, that's a big concern for this team because you start losing. These are players that have not spent a lot of time together. When you have this many transfers in, this many new faces over the last 24 months, if it starts blowing up, the fabric of the team will really get tested. We hear that Windman is a good leader. Speed is in it. That's all good. Peyton Thorne's been a good leader. His game is shaking a little bit. It looks like he's starting to feel the effects of everything crumbling around him. So that's a problem in the coming weeks. But the defensive backs, they've not been torched all that much. Kimbrough did. He's out of the lineup now. It's going to be rain this weekend against a great quarterback. We don't know if Tagovailoa is going to play or Jarrett. They're both game-time decisions, Loxley said. If they don't play and there's a lot of rain, that helps Michigan State's chances. Hate to say that about those two young men at Maryland, great players. But if you watch them against Michigan, they can move the ball. And they moved the ball last year, too. Michigan State handled them at Spartan Stadium last year, and I wrote in the pre-snap read, one of the reasons that helped Michigan State in that game is the game was played, it was like 32 degrees. And Tagovailoa had never taken a snap at anything under than 47 degrees in any game or practice or something like that. And he was affected. He was not himself last year at Spartan Stadium in November. So the pass defense has got to be, you got to work on that. And are there, so the you're not seeing individuals getting burned. Now, when they play Ohio State, individuals will get burned. Even if Smith and Jigba doesn't play, they burn everybody. So that'll happen. But everybody talks about the pass defense in the secondary. The individuals in the secondary haven't been bad. Kendall Brooks causing some fumbles. Could Kendall Brooks be a little bit quicker coming out of his breaks and recognizing and arriving? Probably so. He's a senior, but he's still inexperienced at this level. Justin White is the new nickelback, former walk-on, was more of a return specialist. He's got quick feet. All of a sudden, he's starting his first game ever last week. I didn't see him making a lot of mistakes. There's a couple times maybe he telegraphed a couple of blitz postures. Got to work on those things, but he's replaced Kimbrough, and it's his job now. Kimbrough has really knocked down the playing group for now. So you're asking, what do they need to do to turn the season around? The first thing is turning the season around. What's your definition of turning the season around? If you're talking about like being like last year and having a top 10 team, forget that, right? Having a top 20 team, forget that. Turning the season around to be in top 15 or where they were ranked in the preseason, forget that. That is not happening. Turning the season around, in my estimation, means getting enough wins to where you can get to 6-6 and make a bowl game. That's the way I see it. I could be wrong. How do you get to 6-6? You got to keep slugging. You got to keep the hearts and minds in order and keep slugging. It's no small thing that they kept slugging at the end of this game against Minnesota. I saw some games in 2016 where the team just kind of quit, which was shocking. That's not happening yet. But the cinder block can only take hits from the hammer so many times. Derek Harmon, Maverick Hansen can only be out there so many times. Halliday at linebacker doing a good job can only take so many hits, especially when the offense is not possessing the ball. So Hazelton was talking yesterday about the more we get some of these guys experience, the better they'll be. And that's all you can do as a coach. Get guys out there, get more experience, make corrections. Problem is, Maryland's going to be difficult. Ohio State's going to be impossible. We'll see what Wisconsin is. I can't even remember. And then Michigan's in there somewhere. Can't even remember what the schedule is right now. And Michigan's playing pretty well. So there's a lot of it. But the main things, get the back seven on the same page. Linebackers and all that stuff. Just being able to disguise the coverage and stay on the same page. And that means, if you're playing man-to-man, does the slot receiver and off coverage, Angelo Gross, with a single safety deep, give an inside release? I didn't understand that. That was the 3rd and 8. That was the first third down conversion. Second-year starter. Did the same thing against Washington for a touchdown. I asked Scotty Hazelton about that yesterday because Tucker talked about misalignment problems in a long list of problems. Hazelton kind of mentioned it. So I asked him, you talked about misalignment problems. Is it sometimes something like a slot receiver, an outside leverage, give an inside release? And he said, yeah, those are some of the things we have to tighten up. And then he put a caveat on that and said, sometimes some players are hedging or shading one way to protect against a weakness. I can't remember if he said physical weakness like an injury or an ability weakness, capability weakness. In other words, we'll give up something. He said give up something short rather than giving up something long. Live to fight another day theory, which is okay, except it's gain of 11, gain of 12. They don't want that either. So Gross, I can see why Gross started last week. I love him. He's a good kid. I said all summer that that's a guy that needed to improve. Washington game, continued problems with him. And he runs and tackles well. So against Minnesota, I was not surprised that he started because stopping the run was the priority against Minnesota. And he's your best. He gives you the best chance. He's a good run defender at the safety position. But reading coverages and route combinations and those things, I'm not sure where that is in terms of improvement right now or where it should be. So I think it starts with that. Get that back seven. Same thing I said all in the summer. Get on the same page back there and just hope you can hang on defensively. And we're not even talking about the offense yet. All right, question number 2, Marlington and Columbus. We'll get to his question here in a second. Let's go over here to the comments area. Appreciate everybody checking in. Got a pretty good crowd for a Wednesday afternoon. The regulars are all shuffling in. We got 09. He's not a regular. Gather round. Great to have 09. 09 is, I've not seen him post before, but he knows the lingo. He's been watching. He's here. He's in the starting lineup. He's part of it. Got a lot of respect for 09. Kamala Maddington checking in from Miami. You be safe down there in Florida. Noah Sprunger. He is our intern extraordinaire, saying good afternoon, everyone. Noah, make sure you tend to your studies. He's a great student. Andy Secor checking in from Hudsonville. I appreciate a daytime version. Thank you, Andy Secor. That's the Secor. That's the basketball expert, coach. He's coaching for Susie Merchant's girls a little bit, too, as a matter of fact. Truth. Marlo says, not exactly ideal for work. Sorry about that, Marlo. Hope you don't get fired, or hope you don't lose productivity today. Rob South also. So 0-9, he's first one in. 0-9's running the point. Kamala Maddington, he's a new one. These are grad transfers coming in at this time of day. From Miami, he's my shooting guard today. Sprunger, he's the wing. He can fly. He's running that sideline lane, dunking on people. Secor, he's my shooter. So I'm going 4 guards. In Secor, we're setting down screens for him. He's coming off. He's catching and shooting. He's ringing it up, Sean Resper style. Marlowe's down in the middle, just knocking people all over the place. He's setting screens. He's got his elbows up. He's knocking teeth out. He's breaking noses. Marlowe's wearing a face mask to protect his nose, and his nose isn't even broken. That's what I like. He's got his face mask on, playing basketball. He's got a sweatband on, both wrists, knee pads, Will Ferrell style for the Flint Tropics. But a more physically imposing version of that, all of that. He's doing beautiful things for the 5 for us at the 5. Rob South, he's a regular Cubs hockey. He says, what's up, Jim? Jack Doyle, I have a 2:30 meeting, Jim. Please make the next 6 minutes count. Sorry about that, Jack. You'll be able to check in, watch the replay, but I don't think I saved any lives in the first 6 minutes. Sorry about that. GSF says, go green. Marlon Milano says, what up, good people? Go green, go white. Ain't nothing changed. GSF says, great win for the Spartan soccer guys last night. Noah Sprunger says, make sure to hit that thumbs up. Appreciate that, Noah. Yes, a thumbs up is really good for us with the algorithms. Also subscribe to the channel. That helps more and more Michigan State fans come in here. You might remember a couple weeks ago, we were excited when we passed the 6,000 subscriber threshold here. We're creeping in on 6.3 thousand now, 6,300. I'd love to get to 7,000 by Thanksgiving. Let's make that a goal. Appreciate everybody checking us out. JJ says 12 is the future. Book it. 12. Noah Kim is number 14. 12 is who? Caton Hauser? Is he 12? I don't even know. Alex James says, if the expectation coming off an 11-2 season was to go 5-7, this team is on schedule. Sadly, it was expected to win 8 or 9 games and have an improved defense with experienced offensive weapons. I agree with that, Alex James. You're right. Coming off 11-2, you know, there's some people had Michigan State in the top 15. I thought 8 wins. I said that with a caveat that, last year I thought the ceiling was 7 wins. They went and won in 11. So I increased the ceiling from 7 wins to 8 wins. But, like, if you'd have told me, where's the snaps on this? Getting back to the other point, that this doesn't, first of all, Peyton Thorne's been in some tough situations, but he was missing receivers the first 2 weeks. They won those games. Against Washington, he played well. Against Minnesota, everybody had their struggles. But if you'd have told me in July, okay, by game number 4, these are your top 11 in defensive snaps for game 4. In the top 11, Kendall Brooks, Justin White, Avery Dunn. I would have said, what? I would have said, I've never seen those guys play. 3 of your top 11 on defense in July, we had never seen play. Now, Justin White got in the field for a couple snaps to special teams. They put him in there in the nickel, and he got a blitz against Michigan in, a hurry, 2 or 3 snaps in a couple of games. Kendall Brooks never played special teams. Avery Dunn never played. Those would be 3 of your top 11 in snaps. Kendall Brooks, 78 snaps. Justin White, 66 snaps. Avery Dunn, 38 snaps. If you'd have told me in July those guys are 3 of your top 11 on defense in snap count in week 4, and you'd ask me, what do you think the team will look like? I would say, I have no freaking idea because I've never seen those guys play. Other guys, Jacoby Windman, 65 snaps. He's been good, but in July, we didn't know. Amir Speed, 57 snaps, coming off the bench. He's been okay, but in July, there were hopes for him, but we didn't know. Derek Harmon, 58 snaps. I'd have been like, and he's done well, and he was okay last year. I think he was a true freshman last year, cut some weight, and he's been solid. But out in July, if you'd have told me that Brooks, White, and Dunn and Harmon would be four of the top 11, and then Maverick Hansen, 51 snaps, I'd be saying, okay, where's Barrow? Where's Slade? Angelo Gross, 70 snaps. I would have said, well, okay, maybe he's improved. Nothing against him, but I said all summer, that's a guy that had to improve. Well, he kind of hasn't. Still has ability. Ben Van Sumeren, 77 snaps. I'd have been like, Van Sumeren? Where's Brule? Where's Snow? Van Sumeren? Van Sumeren's starting. He's had a couple of loud plays. He was good on opening night. He had one decent play against Minnesota. I think it was a toss player, swing pass, where he ran out there and spilled it and chased it down. That's what he can do well. He can spill things, chase it down to the outside of the perimeter for a linebacker. Between the tackles, he's not real good in anticipation, making a diagnosis, some false steps. He's not real good with just reading, pulling the pin, and going. And then when he does go, he's usually late, and then he doesn't get off blocks, and then he doesn't have much force when he gets there. I don't mean to rip on him at all. He's just, you compare him to number 55 from Minnesota playing the same position, and Minnesota had a huge edge at that position. Van Sumeren's doing everything he can. Good kid. I wish him the best. But you're wondering why teams are just driving the ball down Michigan State's throats. It's a few things, and it's not just coverage in the back. That's when the ball goes up there, and people are seeing that. But so if you'd have told me in July, Kendall Brooks, Justin White, Avery Dunn, three of your top 11 in snaps, Van Sumeren, 77 snaps, and Harmon, 58 snaps, I'd have been like, where's everybody else? And if you'd have told me that in July, I'd have been like, well, are those guys playing good? I don't know. And no way in hell would I have said 8 wins if you'd have told me that in July. And neither would you. No way in hell. That doesn't excuse the same pageness problems, some of those operational problems, quality control. There are quality control issues also. But the more inexperienced players you're going to have, the more problems you're going to have with quality control. Let's go back to the mailbag. Marlington in Columbus, Ohio. I've got about another hour here, too, by the way. I got to check out at about 4:10, 4:05 Eastern Time. Marlington in Columbus, Ohio says, if you can bring back one player that is injured, which one would I bring back and why? I would bring back Darius Snow. It hurts to have Slade out, but there is some depth there. There has been, depending on what's going on with Slade and Hansen. But, Xavier Henderson is an option. Would be an option, would be a choice. And he would help back there. Could he help with some same pageness on defense? Yes, but Snow can too with communication. Plus, Snow can give you a little bit that thumper in the middle, sideline to sideline, help against the run, help with the pass. Snow is the guy I would bring back if I could bring anyone back. I'd put Snow at the mic, and I'd move Halliday to the will. I really don't know what's going on with this thing. And it's probably bothering you that it's bothering me. But it seems that you guys can hear me. So that's good. All right, Tony in Northville says, realistically, how far away is this offensive line from being top half of the Big Ten? Tony in Northville. He says he's thinking 2024, and that may include a transfer piece to fill in a hole. He says it just seems like there's a lot of work to be done with that group. Offensive line, the coaches are talking about the run game, that they're not that far away, and I would agree. By the way, pass protection was pretty good against Minnesota. It broke down against Washington for sure. That's true. But pass protection really, really graded out well against Minnesota. Michigan State gave up 1 sack, and that was on Broussard. And it was a third down pass play, and I don't know why Broussard is in the game. I mean, Michigan State's role was Harold Joyner. He was your third down running back for pass protection and also as a receiver threat. Maybe he's hurt. I don't know. We never know. We never hear these things. But that's another example of players disappearing, and maybe that one was because of an injury. I don't know. But look out. But Broussard's in there. It's pass protection. It's 3rd and 8, and he gets into a guy for like a second, then the guy gets off, and it's a sack. Not on the offensive line. Offensive line, I didn't see any problems pass protection. And Pro Football Focus had like all 5 offensive linemen grading B or better in pass protection. So that part is good. So don't discount the pass protection. Run blocking, everybody knows, has been a problem. But they're getting in situations where the defense is putting them down 16-0 in the first quarter. And you're getting in, you got to pass to keep up. It's almost like a 2-minute situation. So against Minnesota, they're possessing the ball, scoring every time. Michigan State only had, 14 tailback run attempts against Minnesota. I mean, we've all seen games, going back to D'Antonio's best seasons, where the first 14 run plays of a game might not net a whole lot. You got to keep pounding, and eventually that dam breaks and yards come up later in the game. I'm not saying that would have happened, but it's hard for me to judge an overall running attack when you're only getting 14 tailback runs partly because of what's going on defense. People are getting tired of the complimentary football thing, but that's Exhibit A, complimentary football hurting the Michigan State run game. I'm looking at the run plays, and, Minnesota's got a good defense, good run defense. Number 55 inside linebackers, very good. Safety support is excellent. 23 and 27, I think, are their numbers. Seniors, one guy was honorable mention, all Big Ten, underrated. They play with one brain on that defense. They react quickly. They get there. They compression tackle, angles, leverage. It's all good. I mentioned what they did to Wisconsin's running attack last year. I'm expecting Minnesota to continue to play really good run defense. It's going to be a really good game when they play Penn State. Penn State thinks they've got a running attack this year. They've got some freshman running backs. They feel good about it. We'll see how they do against Minnesota. That one is in Happy Valley. It's going to be a great game. So being unable to run the ball a lot against Minnesota and only 14 snaps is no big crime. There were some plays where Berger had some daylight a couple of times and didn't make the correct cut. He's battling a hip flexor, according to the announcers on Saturday. That's nothing that the coaches have told us. That's not great. That being said, I'm looking at those 14 run plays, and I'm not seeing Michigan State offensive linemen getting destroyed in those run plays. First drive of the second half, Broussard had a nice outside zone cutback. Samac is pulling. Samac rocked the middle linebacker. Broussard cuts back, gains like 6 or 7. Berger had a 9-yard run the first play after Windman caused that fumble in the second quarter. Inside zone, Samac drove the nose guard off the line of scrimmage. 55, good middle linebacker was out in the flat because I think Michigan State had trips out there or something. Samac had a really good game. Samac is improving. He's looking like a mature, solid Big Ten center. And that was a guy I said coming into the season, a guy that really needed to step up. I did not think he played well last year in the Peach Bowl. He's been good, and that might have been his best game. That might have been the best we've seen Samac play. That's good. In terms of running failures, the 3rd and 4 call when Michigan State was down 17-0 and the crowd booed, and then they went for it on 4th down and threw the interception. 3rd and 4, we've talked about that. You can say whether it was the right call or not. Michigan State, obviously down 17-0, was already thinking, this is 2-down territory. We've got 2 plays to get 4 yards. When you think about it that way, running the ball on 3rd and 4 made sense, even though Michigan State was having some success through the air and had not had much success on the ground. So they ran a ground play, and it was stopped for a half a yard. Everybody booed. I can understand that because the pass had worked a little bit, run had not worked. But this was a situation in which Michigan State was not giving up on the run and felt they had 2 plays to get 4 yards. Maybe they thought they'd surprise Minnesota a little bit with a run play on 3rd and 4. Maybe they thought they could set up 4th and 1. Instead, they got 4th and 4 through an interception. On that 3rd and 4, what went wrong? It was Tyler Hunt, and I love Tyler Hunt. Excellent student, amazing athlete, knows football really well, engaging personality. Spoke for the team in a lot of ways yesterday at the press conference pretty well. I like him. Wonderful. But on this play, 3rd and 4, he's kind of coming in motion. 55, linebacker comes in and shoots a gap. And it seems to me that Hunt should have taken the inside threat first. I don't know that for a fact, but if he blocks 55, I think Berger can cut and get 2 or 3 yards to set up 4th and 1. Maybe break a tackle and pick up the first down. Tyler Hunt's been a good player, helped last year. He put on a lot of strength, a lot of weight to improve himself as a blocker, but he's still, on that one, he just didn't identify correctly based on what I saw. As a run blocker, it's still at the tight end position. It's still between him, Barker, and Carr. Carr had a holding penalty on a swing pass for the running back, and he had his hands inside the framework. They probably could have let that go. Carr has improved his blocking, but overall tight end blocking is substandard, not nearly as good as Minnesota. So that's what happened on that one. For Pro Football Focus, they give people a grade 1 to 100, I think it is. And my interpretation of those is 90 and above is championship level, as Mark D'Antonio would say. 75 to 89 is winning. Anything above 64 is functional, I would think. That's not Pro Football Focus's numbers. That's mine. Because if I say somebody grades out at 68, you're like, well, what the hell does that mean? Well, I would say 68 is functional. 64 to 74 is functional. And I don't always agree with their grades because in pass defense, they might not know what the coverage is and what the responsibility is. And I've seen them make mistakes on that. But anyway, Pro Football Focus for run blocking, they had Samac at a 76, which is winning. They had Duplain, Horst in like the low 60s, like just below functional. Carrick and Brown a little bit below them at like 57 to 56. Not terrible. They had Barker, Hunt, and Carr like in the mid 50s. You're not seeing guys on the offensive line just getting destroyed. Tucker says he wants to see some movement up there, and you're not seeing a lot of movement either. Hey, Minnesota's firm. Minnesota on defense is getting stalemate plus. The safety support right now, and they can tackle, and it was hard to run the ball against them. It's going to be hard for anybody to run the ball against Minnesota. We will know more about the offensive line this week. And as we get into the pre-snap read, that has to be the key for Michigan State this week. It's going to be raining. It's going to be a mess. Michigan State's offensive line has to come through. The run game has to come through. AstroTurf, there'll be a little decent grip there. Depends on how much water's on the field. Broussard's key. Elijah Collins could be key if Berger's a little bit banged up. But Maryland gave up a lot of yards rushing against Michigan, and I've not studied that yet. I know Blake Corum ran for like 250, and he's excellent. Michigan State doesn't really have anybody like Blake Corum. Michigan has a very good offensive line. Michigan State's got, I think, a potentially functional offensive line. Looked good against the MAC teams. Had a lot of unexpected problems against Washington. Crowd noise was a factor on some of those. The scoreboard was a factor on some of those. Now they play a Maryland team that just gave up a lot of yards rushing. And you know that Maryland is going to be working all week to improve their rush defense. In order to have a chance to keep up with Maryland on the scoreboard, the rain would be nice to put a damper on Tagovailoa. And then Michigan State has to run the ball in those conditions against a team that just gave up a lot of rushing yards. It's going to be key, obviously. And I think Michigan State has a chance to run the ball against them. I've not studied Maryland in the run defense yet. Usually Maryland is kind of solid with their defensive interior linemen. Every year I think that's been like, they haven't had really good teams, but they've had some explosiveness on offense, and their defensive linemen have been for real. So I kept an eye on that Michigan-Maryland game, but I didn't really study it. So I got to study it to see if Maryland, what the run defense thing there, or was just Corum just special and the blocking was great. Michigan State might not be able to replicate that, but we will learn more this week. I wouldn't give up on the offensive line in the run game just yet. Now, they're not going to run the ball against Ohio State. Ohio State's improved there. Wisconsin had a top 10 defense in the country last year. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. Michigan had a biblical defense. That'll be tough, too. So, in the meantime, we'll be talking later in the season goes along about what the goals are from week to week. And resetting your mindset too. So, offensive line, your question is how far off are they from being in the top half of the Big Ten? Well, what's top half of the Big Ten? That's top 7. Okay, Ohio State, Michigan, Minnesota are very good. Iowa, presumably, is still good on the offensive line, although I've not studied them yet. Wisconsin is Wisconsin. They've got to be pretty good. Penn State's had some bad offensive lines in recent years. I don't know where they are. I don't know who the number 6 and 7 offensive lines are. I've not had a chance to really study. I don't know what Illinois is looking like on the offensive line. I don't know what Indiana looks like on the offensive line. I wish I had time to go back and watch those games. I don't. Some of you that watch college football at home know more about some of these things than I do. I go back and catch up as we go, try to cram some of the 60 minutes on Big Ten Network. But on Saturdays, I'm in the press box for 10 hours. Then I'm working on Sunday and stuff. So I don't really get a chance to tag up and watch the rest of the Big Ten until it's Michigan State's time to play them. Hey, we're all an expert on Minnesota, right? At this time last week, We had a lot of information on Minnesota for the pre-snap read, unlike anybody else, or unmatched, according to anyone else. I'm not ashamed to say that. You could say maybe I spent too much time on that. I don't know. But anyway, so how far is Michigan State from getting into that top 7 of the Big Ten? You said maybe 2024. I don't know. Again, I don't know where the rest of the Big Ten is. I've not studied all the offensive lines out there. I think about past Michigan State's offensive lines that have been mediocre to good, and I think this offensive line, I wouldn't quit on them this year. And also next year with the 6th-year senior thing, you could potentially have Duplain back. You'll have Samac back. You can have Brian Green back. Been a functional second-string guard. Spencer Brown, of course, will be back. You expect all those guys to be back and be better. I don't know about Horst. Brandon Baldwin's got to come back, play left tackle. He moved his feet well. He has to become more physical, more firm. That's possible. Ethan Boyd, redshirt freshman offensive tackle, he's on the right track. Big frame, athlete, he's heading in the right direction. I think there's some pieces there. Then long term, Gino Vandermark's gotten out there. We don't know about Wigginton at left guard a little bit. The true freshmen, we've not seen them yet. Braden Miller, Ashton Lepo, Christian Phillips, Gavin Brocious. But I think I don't close the door on the possibility of vying for top 7 in the Big Ten among offensive lines next year. And again, I've not studied Purdue, Indiana, and some of these others. The offensive line, the pass protection's been good, and the run game, they've had it. They haven't been able to really try to saddle up the run because of the scoreboard in some ways against some good defenses. So, and there's another question here I'll go to right now while we're on this. Question number 7, Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights says, how well did the backup offensive linemen play in the late stages of the first 2 games? He says they need to be ready when called upon or be ready next year. Good point from Jay Bannon. I went back and looked at my notes. Michigan State against Akron. The second-string offensive line, Baldwin at left tackle. Brian Green was playing left guard. Vandermark was at center. Dallas Fincher at right guard. Ethan Boyd at right tackle. Fincher was a little bit shaky. Brian Green is a pseudo-starter. Vandermark, some of the first time he's played. We saw Baldwin start in the first game. We know what he is, and Boyd is coming around. So it was interesting to see Vandermark, maybe Fincher a little bit. Fincher was shaky. Vandermark's just getting started. The first series with Collins at the end of the third quarter back against Akron, Michigan State ran an inside zone, and it was a little bit clunky. Akron was fading, but you can see whatever you think about Michigan State's first-string offensive linemen, when the second string come in, they're just a little bit slower and a little bit more unsure because they're younger guys. A little bit clunky, but there was an inside zone in that first series, and I think Eli Collins gained about 15 yards, and he cut behind Brian Green on that one. Brian Green had a good block. I know Brian Green's not a young guy, but he's a guy that still projects for next year, I would think. Now, Wigginton, we saw him on a counter in that game, and he takes on, I think, the defensive end man on the line of scrimmage, and Wigginton pulls, and he's not moving fast. He's not moving slow. He's a big guy. He's a freshman. He has to continue to become more athletic. And it's a counter, and he delivers heavy contact on the unblocked man and man on the line of scrimmage. That was the play when Hauser pulled it. Caton Hauser was in as the backup quarterback, and Hauser pulled it and went down the left sideline, gain of 13. Just watch Wigginton on that when he pulls, and he's not like super mobile. He can work on that. But when he got there and had a chance to put contact on somebody, it was heavy contact. So that's not bad. A good job by Wigginton on that, I would say. I gave a plus to Vandermark on one. It was on when Michigan State completed a pass to true freshman wide receiver Jerron Glover. Vandermark, it's an RPO, so it's not pass protection. So there's run block elements to it. So he's initially double teaming in a defensive tackle for the RPO, and then there's a blitzing linebacker on the play. So he's double teaming. He's double teaming, and then on the blitzer, he disengages and picks up the blitzer. So it's a really good job physically with the double team and identifying a blitzer and getting off and doing that completion to Jerron Glover. Good recognition and quickness by Vandermark on that when he flashed something there. You're hearing good things about him. He didn't play in the spring game because he was a little banged up. Disappointing not to see him. But among that group of redshirt freshmen, he's the furthest along. Saw a little bit there. In terms of negatives, Dallas Fincher, I think is he a redshirt junior now? So he's not as young as the others. He was a D'Antonio recruit. All these other ones are Tucker recruits. Fincher gave up some movement on the play. You might remember when Fincher got his helmet knocked off if you were still watching. He gave up movement on that one. That was not great. And then when he went out, Wigginton went to left guard and Green moved to right guard because Wigginton the guards at that point were Fincher and Green. Fincher gets his helmet knocked off. Green moves to guard, and Wigginton comes in because Wigginton was not originally part of that pure second string offensive line. But when Fincher lost his helmet, he came in and Green moved. Baldwin is a little bit late on a wide zone to the right. He allowed penetration. So it's zone this way, and he's a left tackle. He allowed some penetration through his gap and a tackle for loss. Actually, there's no gain. There's like 9 minutes left in the game on that one. So Baldwin not quite secure with the daylight on that one. Needs to learn from that. Ethan Boyd allowed a linebacker to come free. I think Ethan Boyd, the way I looked at it, he stayed on a double team a little bit too long when he should have gotten out to the linebacker. And Jordan Simmons was the running back of that one, carried it, made a man miss, gained 2 yards. Not a bad run by Simmons to gain 2 yards on that one, but Boyd got a negative on that play, in my opinion. Fincher was repeatedly getting knocked back 1.5 yards when the guy he was blocking was two-gapping. That was not a great look for Fincher on that one. So you asked me about second-string offensive line in the 2 games against the MAC opponents. That's what I saw from the second-string offensive line, and that gives you a little bit of a window to the future. That's what I saw in the Akron game. Question number 4, Gordy from Albany, Georgia says, Comp, what can you say about Bo Edmondson? All right, Bo Edmondson is the Michigan State 3-star quarterback commitment from Texas. Gordy says, I heard he's having psychological problems. If that's correct, I hope he's getting needed counseling. Do you know if State is recruiting other quarterbacks for 2023? I would agree with that. I don't know. I've not confirmed any of that. I've talked to people that have went to his games, and he's going through pregame. He doesn't look unhealthy physically, but he's not playing. And, there's some talk on the message board, Underground Bunker message board, some people that have their ear to the ground pretty good in Texas high school football, and there's some talk about they're bringing him along. There are some concerns there. And you mentioned some things there. I don't know that to be a fact, but it's if nothing else, is disconcerting when you have a commitment to somebody and no extra pressure on the young man. Teenage high school kid doesn't need some idiot like me up in Michigan, pontificating about what's wrong with him or whatever. Or, it's just football. Like you said, I hope he's getting the counseling that he needs if that is a situation. To your point, he seems to be physically healthy. He's not playing. That's a concern. You got a football program to run. I've not heard we've not detected which other quarterbacks Michigan State might be recruiting at this point. When they got a commitment from him, it was my understanding that they still plan to recruit a second quarterback. And I think they even told Dante Moore's people that. But Dante Moore's people and Dante Moore were like, well, we don't care. We're committing to Oregon. Understandable. Could Michigan State get back in on that one? It's possible, but Oregon's having a pretty good year. Michigan State's not. That does not help. So if Michigan State, when they took a commitment from Edmonton and they were still somewhat interested in Moore back then, I have to believe they'd be interested in a second quarterback at this point. And now with what's going on with Bo Edmonton, they'd better be. They have to be. So we will keep our ear to the ground on that one and see what's going on with quarterback recruiting going forward. Let's go back over here to the comments section. Cubs Hockey 9 says Michigan State hockey looking nice under Nightingale as well. The upgrades they did to Munn look awesome too. I've not been in there. They had the public, I don't know what they call it. Not really an open house, but they had a little media event over there last Friday. I couldn't go, but I walked through it. I walked by it when I was going to a tailgate before the game on Saturday. Looked in there. It looks awesome, and we've seen some video in there. They've done a great job with it. Michigan State has a lot of history to sell, and it looks awesome. Rico Cooney was there. He's been following Michigan State hockey forever. He says it's great. And the building and the facilities used to be a negative, but the chief thing for recruiting is your assistant coaches and your head coach have to be in with the hockey agents and advisors. If you want to recruit the top talent, those players already have agents and advisors, and they place those players in college programs that they think are most conducive for player development, for professional development to the NHL, period. And sometimes that might be North Dakota or UMass or Boston College or Michigan big time in recent years. For whatever reason, Michigan State did not have that favored nation status among agents and advisors in the past. Now, indications are they do. And Nightingale knew that, and he put his staff together knowing that. And he brought in 2 assistant coaches that were not guys that he's coached with before. It wasn't good old boy hires. It was a guy from Clarkson and a guy from UMass. They'd heard good things about, but more importantly, are in with those advisors. And Michigan State has recruited well since then. I saw for hockey, I saw somebody posted, it's recruiting rankings for what it's worth, but in the 2006 birth year, Michigan State is number 4 in the country right now in recruiting for hockey. You're talking about guys that are like current high school sophomores, so this is way down the road. But that pendulum is shifting, and then they've got great upgraded facilities to go with it. So, and it's hard to win in the Big Ten, though. Hard to win in the Big Ten in hockey. Really hard. Because all those programs have history, and they're all well-funded. And out of the 7, only 3 are going to the NCAA tournament every year. So 4 of those traditionally historic, strong programs, and I put Penn State in there, even though they're recent, and I put Ohio State in there, even though they've been up and down over the years. But all 7 are well-funded. 4 of those 7 are not going to the tournament every year. 4 of those 7 are big-time hockey programs. 4 of those 7 are not going to the NCAA tournament every year. Those programs, the Big Ten hockey is fun because the schedule is great, because every week you're playing name opponents if you're a Michigan State hockey fan. But each of these hockey programs, in my opinion, were better off when it was CCHA and WCHA, because back then, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Michigan State, Notre Dame, all 5 were going in on a regular basis. Throw in Ohio State once in a while. They were all going to the NCAA tournament every year. You put them all together, and you're knocking off more than half of them. But there's some excitement there. I would agree with that. Alex James, let's see where we at here. Alex James says Washington and Minnesota are solid teams, but they are not top level. The fact we couldn't compete even with them is frustrating. I would respectfully disagree. Maybe I think they're going to be in the top 10 based on records. I don't necessarily know if they're top 10 teams, but I think that they've got a chance to both be 8-0, 9-0, and climb up there. Top teams, yeah, they're not Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. After that, who is? Clemson just went overtime with Wake Forest. How great are they? Tennessee's supposed to be good now. Florida, they had to hang on to beat Florida. Florida had trouble with a directional Florida team a couple weeks ago, I think. Is Tennessee great? They just lost to Purdue in a bowl game a few months ago. So who's great after those top 3? Michigan? Hey, if Maryland doesn't fumble that kickoff and Tua doesn't get hurt, I think Michigan might have lost to Maryland. Michigan's good, but I don't know who's number 4 in the country. I don't know who number 10 in the country is. Give me, who's in there? North Carolina State? They're number 8 right now. Who else is up there? USC, number 6. Give me USC against Minnesota right now. I've not studied USC. USC just had trouble with who? Oregon State or something? You don't think Minnesota can beat USC? So what's your definition of a top 10? Get back to me on that. X Buckets for Life says, at best, I see us 3-3 in these 2 games. Oh, coming out of it, the 3-3 record, I would agree. Yeah, they're not beating Ohio State. So the only way to get to 3-3 is beating Maryland. That's going to be difficult. Old Tug the Bell Cow says, how did Holloman look at the first practice? Michigan State basketball practice. I was over there with Conan Dyke. You can check the VCast here on the YouTube channel. And we talked about it. Holloman is quick. He's got some strength to him. He's not like bulky because he's a teenager, he's a true freshman, but you can just tell he's got some rigid strength to him that like Travis Walton did it as a young version of himself. Not a big surprise because Trey Holloman was a big-time football recruit as a safety. He is an effervescent personality. He's a wee guy. He's a team guy. He's got some flair as a passer. He's got a real nice drive, pull-up 15-footer, Trey Holloman, freshman. From Minnesota, right? They're trying to get him to slow down because he wants to do everything too quickly. That'll come with time. Shooting, I saw him at Moneyball one time go like 6 of 7 from three-point range, NBA range. I know that's just Moneyball. And defense is optional at Moneyball. Still, 6 out of 7 is 6 out of 7 from NBA range. I saw that. I'm like, man, this shooting was supposed to be this guy's weakness. And I saw him get hot a couple times. I know, Moneyball, asterisk. Just watching his mechanics and the rotation, the shooting, Travis Walton was not a great shooter. And Holloman is kind of in that category. Not a guy that you're going to be wanting shooting a pull-up three-pointer with 20 on the shot clock like Cassius Winston. But in time, can he become a shooter that you have to get out and honor? I think A.J. Hoggard is becoming that a little bit. There were times last year when people just didn't guard him. The year before, for sure, people just didn't guard Hoggard. Don't have to guard him. He can't shoot. He's shooting better. Now it's the point where Hoggard, teams are still going to make him force him to prove he can shoot, and I think Hoggard will. I'm not saying Hoggard is ready to be Cassius Winston as a shooter or even Kalen Lucas, but it's gotten better. Holloman has a ways to go there, and if and when he gets the perimeter shooting together, he'll be an excellent all-around basketball player. He looks good, athletic. So what kind of minutes would he get? I mean, Hoggard and Tyson Walker are going to be starting, and they can each play some point. So do you do a deal where you start both of them, and then when Hoggard needs a breather, you put Walker at the point, and then then you take Walker out, give him a breather, and put Hoggard back in. Kind of the Charlie Bell-Mateen-Cleaves thing. They start together, then Cleaves goes out, Bell runs the point, then Cleaves comes back and Bell sits, and then they both they start and finish first and second half. Could do that. Or if they both need to sit, can Holloman run the point? I think he can. 4 minutes a half. Hope everybody stays healthy, and there'll be some freshman moments, but there'll be some dazzling moments too. He can dazzle. Rockfish says, why is Eli Collins not getting more opportunities, especially if Broussard and Berger have been banged up? Has the staff discussed this at all? I'm sure they've looked at it, and I thought Collins looked pretty good in garbage time against Akron. And I think was it Washington also he carried it a little bit? I thought Collins looked pretty good. I think he's functional. And with Berger being a little bit banged up with the hip flexor, and Broussard, yeah, I could see Collins doing it. I know they've talked about it. Your guess is as good as mine in terms of when we will see that. Could see it this weekend. Doors Fan 91 says, Michigan State's defensive tackles have lost too much weight, in my opinion. It's an interesting point. Mallory was a guy that was always kind of overweight and was functional in 2020, lost a bunch of weight to the point where the coaches are like, last year, okay, you lost too much weight, you need to put more on. And then he lost 5 more. He's down to 280. And he's just not as strong at 280. He's quicker, but it's not like he's an ultra-quick defensive tackle either. He's a guy that needed to put on more weight, in my opinion. That's been an interesting transformation. I don't know. Marlon Milano says, it's one of those situations where injuries versus depth is going to be a problem. It's hard to get the best potential out of your players. Chemistry is everything. I don't care what team you are. I agree with that. JJ says, how about next coach up? Interesting. People have been talking about that, about the coordinator situation. Interesting that, there's a lot of talk and talk shows and message boards about coordinator because for 3 years it's been a problem. But yesterday, Tucker put Hazelton out there to face the fire. I'm glad he did. It was good to talk to Hazelton. Credit to Hazelton. He stood there and was I hear that he's a really great guy, so I'm not surprised that he stood there and took all the questions and was not combative, didn't try to make us in the media look or feel stupid, which is pretty easy to do. He stood up there and answered questions. And he talked about next man up mentality, and without accentuating that point, he mentioned that you can, you're limited when you're playing second team, replacements. But he didn't use it as an excuse. I'd be using it as an excuse, but if you do, then you're kind of running down your own players, and you don't want them to think that you don't have confidence in them. What Tom Izzo would do is he'd have his press conference, then he'd leave the room, and he'd take like 4 or 5 or 6 media members. He might have said, hey, which of you guys traveled to Washington? Which of you guys were in Seattle? Come over here. Go over to the office and say, look, okay, here's the deal. Our personnel is not good. This guy's got this problem. This is off the record, but whatever. That's what Izzo would do. And then he creates a situation where the media is more understanding and less likely to really bring out the pitchforks. But I think the press corps, it's a good, solid press corps. It's very objective, good, solid writers, real good newsmen, and women, and they know that the injuries are what they are, and you don't see people out there doing shock value stuff because it's easy to do that. That's my opinion. I'm sure a lot of you guys think there's some good people there, good writers. All right, so X Buckets for Life says, how confident are you about Saturday? If it were dry and Tagovailoa played, I would be not confident. But again, I've not studied Maryland yet. I'm going to be taking a close look at their run defense. Also, I don't know much about that backup quarterback, but they've got a good scheme. And I posted this during the Michigan-Maryland game that Loxley has really grown on me. I mean, they had some good stuff. When he was a coordinator at Illinois, they had some good stuff then. He was involved there when Zook was the coordinator, was the head coach, and they won the Big Ten that one year. I think they won the Big Ten. Yeah, they played in the Rose Bowl. Running back Mendenhall. Was Juice Williams still the quarterback then? Zone read was still a new thing, but zone read was kind of a finesse offense. They were one of the first teams that did zone read with power as part of it. They were physical with zone read. I thought at that time, Illinois and Auburn were the two teams that were zone read tempo with physicality. Didn't last long, but he was part of putting that together. There was some, Illinois was a little bit sketchy with recruiting, and Loxley was part of it. I was not a fan of that. Did not think that was good for college football. Went into Mexico State, had some off-field problems, had a terrible record there. It was like 3-28. Was not surprised. I was not surprised. Alabama picks him up. He's on the staff. And, okay, whatever. He's part of, and then he becomes offensive coordinator there, I think, for just great talented teams. But interesting that Saban would give him that role. Turned out well. Maryland had a terrible tragedy there. They hired him. He has ties to the area. I thought that was a good hire from a public relations standpoint to show the people in that area that they care, and this guy's going to come in and he will care. And I was like, okay, that's good. He'll come in there and that'll be good for outreach, and he'll be terrible in 3 years. They'll fire him, and then they'll start over. I was wrong. He's come in, and they've incrementally become better and better. Last year, they were pretty good. They had that game at the end of the year against Rutgers, it was a decider on who was going to which bowl game, and that was a nice scrap. I mean, Maryland, they had a good year last year, explosive at times. Now they're better. At preseason Big Ten Media Days, Loxley gets up there in Indianapolis, and in so many words says, I can't believe you guys don't have Tagovailoa in all the national watch list. I can't believe you don't have him way up there in the all Big Ten rankings. He says he in so many words said he's a special player. I thought it was the strongest statement by any coach at Big Ten Media Days. I'm like, man, we knew Tagovailoa was pretty good, but he's got up there and said, dude, you don't know how good he is. And I was like, whoa. And then this year, Tagovailoa has been excellent, and he's had a lot to do with it. Dan Enos, I think, is still offensive coordinator there. And Enos struggled as offensive coordinator at Miami prior to that. I mean, they were really bad. But now he's there, and they're really good. They're really doing some things keeping Michigan off balance last week. How much of that is Enos? How much of that is Loxley? Those two together, they worked together at Alabama. I don't know. How much was Enos hamstrung at Miami when he was coaching for Manny Diaz? I don't know, but it looks like two different things. But good for Enos and good for Loxley. They both, Loxley's proved me wrong, and that's going to be a tough game. I'm still studying that one. Kevin Schroeder from Holly, Michigan, checking in. Hope everything's well in Holly with the Holly Hotel burning down halfway last summer. Historic Holly Hotel, one of the great historic buildings in Oakland County. I hope the outside of that still looks okay. I'm sure the inside is gutted, but the outside looks like, I don't know, I'm not an expert on it, but it looks like maybe it can be salvaged. That was sad. Say hello to everybody at Red Devil Pizza for me. Cubs Hockey 9 says, I like the idea of going after Oregon State's defensive coordinator. Dude is making like $500,000. We easily can double that. Okay. Alex James says, the defense is what it is. The fact the offense looks completely hopeless is just as alarming. So much for winning shootouts. I would agree with that. I don't think there's a lot of hope for winning shootouts. Marlon Milano says, yeah, Tuck might have to upgrade from Hazleton. Mike Muscari says, if we win the toss, no way we defer, right? Got to take the ball and try to get the lead. Maybe, unless it's a torrential downpour. Then maybe you go on defense. Sea-Dog says, if the defense, because this might be a game where you might want to go on defense to begin both halves. I don't know. Depends on how bad of a monsoon it is. Sea-Dog says, if the defense continues like this, Tuck will have no choice but to can Hazleton after the season. Alex James says, we'll defer and be down 14-0, 16 into the game. Alex James is not very confident. Maybe he's a realist. I don't know. But, Alex, if you're at work today, no one's going to judge if, you go under your desk and pull out some whiskey, Lou Grant style. Do you guys know who Lou Grant was? Probably not. Dating myself. JJ McKay, 6Man1, says, good afternoon, Comp. Thanks for your press coverage. Thank you. Nice dog, too. Nice dog. JJ says, the problem with the transfer portal is if we are not missing buys that transferred from our MSU, oh, guys, what makes you think other schools are missing? I don't know. Anyway, he says transfer portal's overrated. I know some people that would agree with you. I think it can be used. I mean, Alabama and Georgia's bringing in guys and just plugging them in, picking and choosing. They go out and get the best running back, Gibbs, in the portal from Georgia Tech, plug him in. Not a lot of guys, but it's in some ways the portal is helping the rich stay rich. I think Rick Neuheisel said it's helping the rich get richer, and I don't disagree with that. Mike Muscari says, add Jordan Simmons onto the milk carton list. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that just disappear. Harold Joyner, Jordan Simmons. And it's not like you can play 6 running backs, but Joyner had a role as a passing down running back for pass protection or catching the ball. Had Broussard in there and he missed block, sack. Barker had a big game on opening night, and he didn't play as much in the second game. But now you're seeing Barker. I thought Barker made some mistakes in routes in this game. We'll run some film. I'll see if I show that a little bit. Let's get into some film here. You guys want to look a little bit? I just put some stuff together. I don't know. These are not necessarily the most important plays of the game. We got to go slow motion, I think, for copyright reasons. This is 3rd and 4. So this is the one the crowd booed. This is the one before the interception. Michigan State had passed the ball a couple times, got a couple first downs out to midfield, down 17-0 midway through the second quarter, and then run the ball on 3rd down. People didn't like it. But if you watch this, Tyler Hunt, I love him, bless his heart, but yeah, watch 55. See the yellow line right there, 55 in the middle. Excellent middle linebacker. I compared him to Max Bull on the pre-snap read. He sees it, he shoots the gap. He's coming in the B gap. 55 is. Here comes 55 downhill. You see 97, Tyler Hunt right there. Tyler Hunt shifts and goes after the outside threat and leaves the inside threat unblocked, 55, and it gets stopped. I'm not sure what Tyler Hunt was thinking on that. Again, bless his heart, good guy, good Spartan, former walk-on, tons of respect. Now over here at left tackle, Horst has the defensive end. I guess Hunt thinks that there's an outside linebacker blitzing, but the slot linebacker has that outside linebacker. The slot receiver has a chip on that outside linebacker. But so when coaches talk about everything is okay, but there's one thing that breaks down, that's an example. I don't necessarily think this is a bad play call. Again, they're obviously thinking 2 downs. They're thinking 2 downs to get 4 yards. Watch St. Mac and the right guard, Carrick, double team. Actually, it's Duplain and St. Mac. Double team. And they get some movement initially on the defensive tackle, half yard of movement. That was enough. They've got guys sealed there. Not bad. But Minnesota's got a good run defense. That linebacker has a lot to do with it. Michigan State on this one has, 6 blockers. This is 6 against 7 in the box. So Minnesota's outnumbering you also. And they play square, they play smart, they play fast. They're solid. All right, so now it's 4th down. Now the interception. All right, on this one, I talked about this on the message board yesterday. Okay, it's 4th down and 3. Minnesota goes into cover 2. So cover 2 zone, halves. That means, see up there at the 40-yard line, that corner right there, cover 2. So I wish I had a telestrator here. That corner, Michigan State wants to run a high-low here. Everybody runs high-lows against cover 2. The receiver out of the top is Keon Coleman. He's going to run past the corner. Corner's going to pass him off in cover 2. And Keon Coleman is now getting into the cover 2 window. Keon Coleman has just run past that corner up at the 40-yard line, top of your screen. Michigan State needs a second receiver to go out to the flat to force that corner to come up to cover the flat to open that window. Instead, watch Barker in motion here. Barker's the tight end. I'm guessing Barker's the guy that maybe was supposed to go out to the flat. He's supposed to go to the flat read zone, and give you a high-low. He's supposed to go out between the 40 and the 50 out in the flat and force that corner to come up so that Coleman is open. And the quarterback has a choice, make the corner wrong, the guy standing on the 40-yard line. If he comes up to take Barker, throw to Coleman. If he sinks with Coleman, then throw to Barker. Instead, Barker plants his foot and runs like a return route, like a pivot route, like it's man-to-man or something. I think Barker was supposed to go out there to the flat. Now the corner does not have to cover a high-low. And if you're Thorne, you got a busted play here. And he's like, it's fourth down. I'll take my chances, give a guy a chance to catch it. I'll force it in here. I can throw an incompletion. They get it right here. I can try to run it. I probably won't pick it up. Thorne's screwed right now. So the corner is sinking, getting deeper, and that cover 2 hole is closed. And he's like, well, it's fourth down. Shoot the dice. And the corner makes an interception. And the safety's just now getting over there because he had to, he's got half the field. You occupy him with some other routes, other route combinations and route expressions. But this goes down as an interception on Thorne, but I'm wondering about Barker. See, Barker, he's supposed to go to the flat, I'm guessing. And I wanted to ask Thorne about this yesterday, but I was talking to, who was I talking to? I was talking to Derek Harmon a little bit, and I was helping Rico Cooney. We were both talking to Behringer. He's got an interesting feature coming up on the punter, who's an interesting story. And Thorne came and went, and I missed him, and I would have asked him about this play. But anyway, not only is, now look over here, you've got the other problem. The running back goes out into the pass route, and Jaden Reed is on the shallow cross. And they're reading zones, so it's a shallow cross. You just sit down in a zone, but watch Reed and the running back. They end up like right next to each other, which is never a good idea. And Barker, I'm not sure he ran the right route. I really don't think he did, because this is a cover 2 beater, and they don't run a high-low smash concept. They only run half of the smash. I don't think that's on Thorne at all. So that's quality control. Why is that screwy? These are the things they're talking about, death by 1,000 cuts or death by inches, whatever it is. It's not great. All right, what else do we have here? I can't remember what I saved here. Oh, so they get the ball back. And now, you don't get a pass rush. Windman up at the top is you get to run an inside stunt, ends up inside. He has not been as productive with inside moves, but they're trying to set a pick here to turn Barrow loose. You're watching the pass rush. Maverick Hansen actually has improved his ability to run the hoop here, and he runs the hoop tight and almost gets a hand on him. But the quarterback doesn't really have to worry about the pass rush on this play. And they run a couple of verticals, kind of a dagger concept. The inside receiver is going deep, and he's going to take the safety off, take the top off the defense. See the inside receiver at the 30-yard line? Now, the outside receiver just kind of waits and lets him clear out and just kind of comes in here. And then the outside receiver heads to the post. So the first receiver takes that safety deep, and that's why this thing is wide open. Pass rush has to work together. Pass rush doesn't get home. Michigan State's trying. They're running Windman inside, trying to set a pick for Barrow. Doesn't get there. Quarterback on time, anticipating it. Kendall Brooks, could he have, this guy's got open by 5 yards. Could Kendall Brooks have come in sooner to defend this? Probably not, because you see the outside receiver, or the inside receiver is deep down the sideline. So Michigan State was in cover 2. That corner was letting him go. So that safety's got half the field. The safety has to stay as deep as the deepest. You see where the deepest is. So Brooks has to react from back there. So it's kind of understandable. That one is not on Brooks as to why wide open that guy was. Michigan State plays cover 2, and they run a stunt. Iowa's been doing that for years. You just kind of need guys to get home. At this point, like, nothing's working. So, and the quarterback is just picking cherries out here. All right, next play here on this drive. This is a situation where, Hazelton talks about some guys are trying to do too much. Hazelton's, and we've heard that over the years with various coaches. You get a situation where, and Hazelton is interesting the way he talks. He doesn't finish his sentences. So he's like, we ask guys what they were thinking here, and I was trying to do too much. And no, that's wrong. Don't do too much. Do your job. We used to hear Tressel talk about that too, and that's part of trusting what's going on. Running play, Michigan State ends up with 2 guys in the same gap. I think Brooks comes up. See Brooks standing on the 30-yard line. He's coming up to support the run. Defensive end, the right defensive end is Zion Young, tight end side, and he's got the ABC. He's got the C gap. I think he's in the B. He slides to the B. So Zion Young is in the B gap right here. and Kendall Brooks is coming up to support the run. The problem here is Kendall Brooks goes caboose with Zion Young instead of fitting it to the outside. So you have Zion Young and Kendall Brooks both in the same gap, and nobody's in the C gap. You've got daylight there. One of those guys is supposed to take that. If Michigan State were a one-gap team, you'd know for sure who's supposed to be in that gap, and there's usually fewer errors. The way Michigan State does it, like Georgia and Alabama and a lot of other people, they might ask an offensive end to stick his head in there, make him spill it, and then react to the outside and catch it to the outside. So it's spilled, but it's spilled to nobody. And as Bill Miller or Nick Saban used to say, if you got two guys in the same gap here, you might as well be playing with 10 guys. Nick Saban used to say, I'd rather have a barrel out there in the C gap rather than a player, because at least the running back's got a chance to run into the barrel and fall down. You got all this daylight here. And it's not because anyone was beaten physically. It's because the run fit is incorrect. So it gets out for about a 15-yard gain. And Angelo Gross, okay, they both slip and fall. But one thing Angelo Gross does well, he can run and tackle, and that's why he was in this game. Is that enough? I don't even know what the next play is. All right, here's another look at it. So you got Zion Young. He's outside shade. Well, he's coming into he's two gapping now. And now he's going to stick his helmet to the left to spill it. But Brooks is coming in there also. You have two guys in there. Two people in one gap and nobody in the next gap. When they talk about experience and getting guys to do things right, I mean, Kendall Brooks is a veteran, but he's still inexperienced, still in this system as well. And, Zion Young's a freshman. Those are the type of things Hazelton was talking about yesterday when he says, we get guys more experience and keep working hard, and it'll get better. And it will, but the problem is the opponents are not going to get any easier. What's this one? That's a good run play here. All right. Oh, no, this is something, Michigan State did this counter boot, these nakeds, drag. They did this 4 or 5 times and did it well. Trey Mosley gets one. That's one thing that was kind of new last week that was pretty good. The counter boot was pretty good, and Thorne can do it running either way. That's good. All right, some run blocking. This is 2nd and 2. Watch Samac again at center. Gets pretty good movement. Stands that guy up, double team. They move him back about a half yard. And these are good defensive tackles, so they pick up 2nd and 2. Some fall forward yardage there. This is the first drive of the second half when Michigan State's moving it a little bit. 2nd and 4, Broussard with a nice little carry here. Again, Samac. I think a wide receiver block is good on this one also, Trey Mosley. Samac crosses face, gets a seal. Horst has a seal. So look at 59 and 79 and 67. They've all, they've walled the guy off to create a wide zone type of situation, and you get a good block from Trey Mosley. It's a nice, they gained some yardage. Not bad. Now they got the fumble coming up. And even on the fumble, I know it's not an interior run, but Samac again gets a seal. Got 79 zone pyramid type of thing. Now, Thorne was asked about it, carrying the ball in the right hand. It's kind of a cardinal sin type of thing. He says it's never been a problem in the past. It's a problem there. If he doesn't fumble it, it's 2nd and goal from the 2. Then it's possibly a 17-7 game. Michigan State's still going to lose, but 17-7 would have felt better. All right, this was, in terms of, Michigan State, watch in the slot down here, Justin White. Saban would say that his blitz posture is too much. Saban would be yelling at him in practice right now saying, everybody in the stadium knows you're blitzing. I'm sure Tucker does too. So slot is obviously blitzing. Quarterback knew it. And the safety is 15 yards off. So it's RPO. Offensive line is either run blocking or pass blocking. Do either. Freeze the linebackers just wide open, just easy. Part of that gets back to not disguising what you're doing well enough. But it's a first-time starter there. This is the opening drive of the game. This was the one I talked about in the .comp article. 3rd and 8, they had trouble on 3rd down all day. Michigan State's pressing. People say they're not pressing. They pressed. If you just watched, they did enough. The single safety deep. So it's man-to-man. What I don't understand is the outside leverage. All right, you're pressing 3 of the 4 receivers. The 4th receiver is the tight end. Angelo Gross is the innermost defender there. He's the guy that's 5 yards off, and he's outside leverage. That's what I asked Hazelton about yesterday also, if you listen to the press conference. He talked about misalignment. Tucker talked about misalignment. I said, was that one of the examples, like an inside receiver with outside leverage with no safety help? Now watch the safety. Kendall Brooks is back there deep, single safety deep, and he's not arriving to help anybody. He's not deployed to help anybody. The ball is snapped, and he's going to end up back in the end zone. He's way back in the end zone. So there is no safety help. And the linebackers are kind of, one linebacker's going to the flat. It's man-to-man. Another linebacker looks like he's green dogging. So Gross has no way to cover this guy. He's got all this green space, all this wide open air, and a free inside release. Outside leverage, I don't know if this is a misalignment where they want him to play inside release and take his chances on something deeper to the post. Hazelton said that that's the case sometimes. But for the quarterback, this is just too easy. You got inside release with nothing but airspace. Big target. And structurally, I don't think Gross has a chance on that unless he's wrong in his alignment on that. I'm just not sure. Those things I don't think are going to remain problems, but some of those things are correctable. And when they do get corrected, how much better will they be? They'll be better. Good enough to beat Ohio State, Michigan? Probably not. But when it's corrected, if they're healthy, can they compete with Wisconsin, Maryland? That's what they're hoping for. Minnesota does a lot of this. Is the last play we'll look at. 3rd and 9, Peyton Thorne. They show 6 on the line of scrimmage. They do a lot of this where they show 6 but only 3 rush. It's a 3-man rush, 3rd and 9. This is where I'm wondering if Peyton Thorne, if things are starting to bother him a little bit. The pass protection was good all day. It's 8-man coverage. Can he hold that longer? He throws underneath, and there's really no chance to get 9 yards here. Looks like it's actually 3rd and 6. It's 3rd and 6. I'm sorry, I can't read. On the field, it says 3rd and 9, but 3rd and 6. So this decision maybe is not as questionable as I originally thought, because there is a snowball's chance that he could catch it and get the yards after coverage. My point is, it's a 3-man rush. Pass protection has been good. It's early in the game, so it's not like it's been good all day, but it's where I'm wondering about Thorne. Should he have held this longer and looked for something a little bit more downfield? Against an 8-man coverage, it's hard to find anything open in general, but this is really an early decision against the 3-man rush. 3 guys are coming, and he makes 2 reads and hits the crosser against zone. It really doesn't have much of a chance. So anyway, that's just a little bit of film stuff. I don't know if you guys are into that or not, but what I showed you there, there's other times with various problems. There's obviously 120 plays in a game or whatever, but it's not like I went and picked. I didn't go to look for this, but in those plays, it's not like they were Michigan State individuals just getting blasted and beaten. Now, Van Sumeren needs to do a better job of patrolling the alley, pulling the pin, and pressing a gap. Like 55, you saw 55 press the gap on that 3rd and 4. Michigan State does not have a guy doing that right now. You got to read it right now, get in there, and thump. And Michigan State doesn't have that. I don't know if they've got that on the roster healthy right now. So that's a problem. Other than that, and then Avery Dunn against those double teams getting moved off the page, I didn't have anything showing that. And I'm not here to embarrass anybody. But other than some of those plays, you're not seeing a lot of physical beatings. You are seeing some questionable carrying out of execution, which is correctable theoretically. But the same patient's problems in the secondary last year was correctable also, and it didn't get corrected. So that's a concern, obviously. Now, let's go to, I've only got about a few more minutes here. James in Milwaukee says, what changes can be made to the defensive scheme realistically at this point to be effective at all for the rest of the season? Tucker mentioned he had some ideas. James in Milwaukee says, any idea what kind of ideas those would be if you had to guess? He says, Hazelton mentioned that they cannot really disguise looks due to the youth of the defense. Mooby seems to think there are some things that can be done, but is there, in your opinion? What can be done? Same pageness and have the ability to disguise a little bit. Defensive front versus the run, they're in survival mode right now. If you can regain some health there, it's a possibility. Linebackers have to be better in pass defense. In Washington, there are some grave errors in some tight end releases. I'm not sure if run defense can be helped for what I was talking about a minute ago in terms of having a guy like 55 that's just your basic thumper middle linebacker. I talked to Mooby about this, and I talked to someone else close to the program. I don't know if this is possible, but one thing you could do is move Windman to middle linebacker. But if you do that, it's the old Judd Heathcote thing where you're taking your thumb out of the dike here and another hole opens up. you know, changing gears on the offense thing with Barker, you know, you can call that a side adjustment error. That's what that looks like. There was another play where Barker, I can't remember specifically what it was, where also Barker, in my opinion, ran a curious route that didn't make sense. And okay, it was the sack. It was the one time when Broussard gave up the sack from their own 38-yard line, 3rd and long. On that one, Thorne held it a little bit too long. That was the second drive of the game. Barker was the number 2 receiver. He runs a vertical. It's cover 4. So Minnesota has 4 defensive backs, and they're all dropping back, all 4 of them. 2 safeties deeper and the corners deep, but the 2 safeties are deeper. So it's like a shell dropping back. And Barker's the inside receiver. It's 3rd and 8. And with them dropping back, he's open right now. And against that coverage, I'm wondering, why is he continuing to go vertically? You know, maybe Barker was running a clear out to create room for Reed, who was running a dig. Again, that would be a dagger concept. Broussard gives up the sack. It's 3rd and 8. You need a first down. Minnesota all day was picking up 3rd downs. This one, Barker with that deep coverage zone, maybe he's supposed to take the top off for the dig. I'm thinking, and Thorne was looking at him, you've got space right there, right at the sticks. Most offenses have option routes dialed in, side adjust, where you adjust to the route, break it off 11 yards, first down. I'm wondering and worried about Barker, why he kept going deep. Is it him? Is it the scheme? I don't know. That the interception on 4th down, why did he run an inside pivot when it's cover 2 and they need someone in the flat for a high-low? That one I got to believe is him. And on that 3rd and 8, death by inches, then I'm starting to wonder transfers. You know, when you have somebody in the program for a long time, they make mistakes and you hammer them and you make him feel bad, and he feels he needs to give to his opponents or his teammates. I see something like that, and I wonder about the transfer effect. You know, how great is the care factor? How much is a transfer really, really, really into the playbook? How much has a transfer really, 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 really been confronted and corrected all along? Tucker doesn't want to live on transfers the whole time. He wants to morph more toward supplying his roster with high school players, but right now he's got a lot of transfers, and it worked great last year, but that's what comes to mind when I see something like that. Anyway, James of Milwaukee, defense. Realistically, schemes, whatever you can do to get everybody on the same page. And, you know, Tucker said the pass rush was close a couple times. Go back and look at it. There were a couple times when Windman did beat a guy, but the quarterback, it came out too quickly. Got to get that pass rush going again somehow. Can you blitz more? Maybe, but that opens up areas elsewhere. But same thing I said in the summer. Get on the same page back there. Get healthy up front. Schemes, they run the same schemes everybody else does. Same coverages. 2 deep, man under. Single safety deep, man to man. Cover 3, cover 2, cover 6, cover 4. Everybody does the same coverages. You just got, linebackers have to be smarter with their areas, and just got to do them better. It's not like you just dial up and say, hey, let's run that defense that Baylor's running. Let's just start doing that. Can't do that. And Baylor's doing the same stuff anyway. But like some of the outside technique on a free release, you have to show up with some resistance there. Is Gross being told to play outside release and give that wide open? That's not going to work. He's got to play inside release, I would imagine, to just give yourself a chance to cover a guy, and then maybe he breaks that off and goes deep, maybe gets beat deep. I don't know. But you can't do that on 3rd and 8. If those are screws that need to be tightened, tighten those up. Let's see what it looks like. Question number 6, Comp. Any info trickling in about some defensive line recruits? I'm concerned about the current depth. Well, they have commitment from Andrew DePape, 4-star from Iowa. Nice athletic guy. Jalen Thompson, solid 4-star from Detroit Cass Tech. You know, they're trying with David Hicks, one of the top pass rushers in the country from Texas, but that's going to be very, very difficult. That one's looking like Oklahoma. Tamarian Parker's a guy from Phoenix City, Alabama, looking like maybe Clemson. We'll put an ear to the ground to see what's going on with him. You know, Jason Kilp tells me about Ashton Porter. He's a 4-star defensive end from Cypress, Texas, 6'3", 240, committed to Northwestern. Northwestern's having a bad season. Michigan State's in there a little bit. The Longhorns are in there a little bit also. That could be one. But as far as defensive line moving forward, technically Slade and Barrow could come back next year. Barrow, I thought, could have such a good season. He might look to go pro, but he's getting hurt so much. I don't know if that's happening. But Slade, I think, can have a 6th year next year. Derek Harmon's looking good. He'll be even better next year, I would think. Maverick Hansen back next year. Solid second stringers. Jalen Hunt, still a project, but he looked physically firm last week. He's got to stay healthy. Van Sumeren has further to go. He's a teenager. Zion Young showing some promise. Keith Bogle can go back for a 6th year. I think he looks pretty good, sturdy against the run. Pass rush is limited. Pietrowski can come back. Winman can come back, I think. Brandon Wright, he's been quiet. We heard a lot of buzz about him in the spring and the summer. It's not really come to fruition. Almost had a sack on Saturday, got a face mask instead. Depth, I think all those guys can come back. I'm not saying any of them are Bubba Smith, but in terms of depth, if they're healthy, it's not an emergency situation the way it is right now. Question 7 was Bannon about offensive line backups. We went through that. Question 8, Berkea from Sykesville, Maryland, asks simply, why can't we have nice things? Why can't we have nice things? Why can't we just have nice things? It's because the kids break everything. Question 9, Hudson Dog, presumably from Hudson, Michigan. He says, in the past, Michigan State's had good success moving players to more productive positions. Are there any players on the current team that might benefit from a move to a new position? It's a great question. He says, like speed to safety or receiver, Amir Speed, or Gross to nickelback. Some of you in the last couple minutes can throw out some of your suggestions that you might have, but nothing comes to mind. Mubi was talking about this, and I don't mean to plagiarize, and I don't think he'd mind me talking about this, but we talk about moving Winman to linebacker and then moving Barrow to defensive end. Can Barrow play defensive end? If he's healthy, I think he is quick enough he could do it. And put Winman in the middle, maybe he can thump a little bit better. That would be like a Bill Miller move. If you remember Bill Miller in 2002, they had all kinds of injuries, and they kept changing it every week, and they ended up leading the Big Ten in total defense in terms of yardage. And that was kind of amazing. That type of thing they would get done. They had other problems later on, the next year and so forth, but that year that was pretty amazing. Montori Foster, they've played him at defensive back a little bit. Could he play safety? I don't know. I mean, they're having trouble getting those guys to be on the same page. I think, keep your eye out for some freshmen. Got some freshmen getting healthier. Caleb Coley there at slot. He might be the next guy up if Justin White makes a mistake. Keep an eye on the freshman. Sola in Westland, Michigan says, up to this point, your message has been that you would be a buyer of Mel Tucker stock based on what you've seen. And that's true. I said that not this summer, but the summer before. If he had been a stock, I was saying buy, and that would have been a nice Wall Street windfall for a lot of you if he were a stock. And Sola in Westland says, now that we've seen these various quality control issues on the defensive side of the ball, is that still your sentiment? Does the quality control fall more on the coordinator or Tucker, in your opinion? It's both. It's a coordinator, but Tucker's got to make sure that doesn't happen. The quality control is alarming. Yes, it does fall on the head coach, and that's his defensive coordinator. So the coordinator either has to fix it or Tucker has to make changes. I think Tucker's not shy about that. If it stays the same and the results don't change, that's a problem, and Tucker knows that. I will say this. I was at a couple tailgates before the game, and I was talking to some very concerned Michigan State fans. Actually, they weren't that concerned. And I was like, you should be concerned because Minnesota is damn good, and Michigan State is probably going to lose by 2 touchdowns. I said, going to this game, maybe Michigan State will make progress from the Washington game. We'll see injuries, but we'll see whether they can tighten these things up in 1 week. And it was kind of a day shorter based on travel. I made the comment to a couple people. I said, I feel like I'm going to get a quarterly earnings report on a stock that I've got a lot of money in, or that you guys have. It was like, it's game number 4. It's like quarterly earnings report. I said, we're about to get a quarterly earnings report in the next 5 hours, and it might not be good, and you might want to sell. So short-term sell. Let's see what happens, whether they can keep these guys playing hard. Even if they're losing, are they still hammering? End of the Minnesota game, Harmon's in there. He's still hammering. Avery Dunn only has so much to give. There was one play I showed Konadek and Cooney yesterday. I'm like, look, man, Avery Brown took on a double team and actually was firm against it. Hey, it worked. So, like Hazelton says, the more experienced guys get, the better they'll get at certain things. But physically, there's some guys that just can't hold up to some of those things. Can Van Sumeren get better? I'm talking about Alex, the freshman. When you're talking about Zion Young, Van Sumeren, and Dunn, who's a young redshirt sophomore, physically they're only capable of so much. But regardless of the scoreboard and wins and losses, there's a way to play, and are they still hammering? When Izzo's teams are losing and down by 20 and have a 3-game losing streak, they still are hammering. Now, football is more of a grim sport. It's harder to keep hammering. But regardless of what happens on the scoreboard, if I'm buying stock, I want to see, are they still hammering? Is there still buy-in? And from there, what do the young guys look like? From there, are they getting more on the same page? The leverage issues, are those getting solved? The gap issues I showed you on that run play, are there fewer of those? I don't care if they lose to Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin or whatever. If those things improve from a fundamental standpoint, blocking and tackling, like they would under a Mark D'Antonio, then you might sell off a little bit, but it's a hold. You hold your position in terms of stock. If those things deteriorate, come back in a few months, I might put out a sell. We'll see. And then we'll know. We'll learn more next year. Secor Sig from Cedar Springs says, Comp, I always appreciate your perspective and knowledge of MSU football. It adds great comparison perspective to current situations. Having said that, which past Michigan State team does this team remind you of the most right now? It's a great question, and I got to think about that one some more. M. Powell says, Michigan State's defensive tackles are they too light in the pants? He says, give me some 320-pound monsters in the middle. Good point. Deshaun Mallory was 330 at one point, and they took a lot of weight off. Defensive tackles, not a problem when they're healthy. Slade, Barrow, and then second string, Harmon, Hansen, they've been okay. I'm not saying they're going to be able to withstand the best interior running attacks, but defensive tackle was the one position on defense that I thought graded out well. Everybody, I appreciate the comments. I've got to run. I've got to go run an errand, so I'm not going to be able to get to some of these comments over here in the comment section. I appreciate all the comments and everybody playing along and everybody checking in on a Wednesday afternoon. We might do this shorter with just a 3 and out in the future in the afternoon, but this is a little bit different. I've got things I do on Wednesday night, which makes Wednesday nights difficult. Hope you appreciate that. But if you can't watch it live, hopefully you check it out on demand. And I just think it's better to get this out Wednesday than on Thursday because it gives everybody an extra day to watch stuff heading into the next game. Anyway, appreciate the thumbs ups, the thumbs that are up, and everybody that's subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Appreciate everybody that's come in and played along. And enjoy the football this weekend. Look for some progress. It might be there. Pre-snap read coming up on Friday. Check us out at SpartanMag.com for subscribers. Check out the pre-snap read. We've been pretty accurate with that thing through 4 games this year, for better or worse. Appreciate everybody checking in. We'll see you next time. Take care.